But anyway, as we dive into our conversation for this morning, many of you all may not be aware of this, but in elementary school, middle school, and most of high school, I played soccer. And this was a great sport for my personality because I had a lot of energy. I had a hard time sitting still. And played a sport. I sports where you had an offense and defense. You had to sit on the sideline for a little bit. Like soccer, you just get to always go. You get to always move. And so this was a good sport for my personality, right? We would call it football, right? Here we have American football and there's football. But I played in a lot of different leagues and eventually found myself on a number of pretty competitive soccer teams and developed a lot of good friendships through those teams and even some good relationships with coaches I had. In fact, Haddon's middle name is actually the name of one of my coaches I had. And so I remember many times, though, my experience of being coached, there were two things that we were given as bits of advice over and over again. One thing was to keep it simple, right? Kind of remember the fundamentals of the game. And this isn't just unique to soccer. This is unique to every sport. You keep it simple. And then there was a saying that my coach would tell us regularly is put the ball on frame. So what do those two things mean? Well, to keep it simple, one, remember the fundamentals. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. But it was important for young guys and girls playing soccer because they kind of grew up watching their role models play, and they watched them perform some pretty fancy footwork and take on a whole defense themselves and score this amazing goal, and everyone wants to be like that. And so they would go and try to do this and quickly lose the ball and their opportunity at a goal. And so we were told, right, keep it simple. Remember the fundamentals, right? Be a team player, right? Just give a simple give and go. Use your teammates. Don't overcomplicate it. Because as many of you all know from many different sports, right, the team that can play together the best often wins the game. It's not the best player. So we were told, right, keep it simple, and then put the ball on frame. And you may or may not have heard this term before, but essentially the idea is forget that the goalie even exists for a moment. You know the frame of a soccer goal? If that ball is not within the frame, you'll never score a goal. And this was important because, again, you grew up watching these amazing goals, right? These top corner goals, these amazing trick shots, and you start doing that, it gets kind of risky. The margin for error increases. And if you never have the ball on frame, you will never score a goal. And so our coach advised us, just pick a corner that the goalie's not in and put it on the ground through it, right? All it has to do is cross the line, right? Not impressive, but effective. Right? It doesn't matter how you do it, right? The goal is literally to score a goal. But many things get in the way of that, right? Seeking to look like your favorite player. Trying to kind of get the glory for yourself for the win, right? Take it on the defense. Making that game-winning score. Being known for your impressive footwork ability, right? Those are things that kind of get in the way of winning a game as a team. And again, soccer is not a complicated sport. It's actually pretty basic, right? It's very fundamental. You got to know how to handle a ball. You got to be in somewhat decent shape to run around. You got to know how to work with your team, start winning. And I share that with you because it relates really to the church today. Because often what happens is we will chase things that seem important while neglecting the essentials, and inevitably things will fall apart. Right? Just like in soccer, chasing things that seem important, being the star of the team, getting that cool goal, seems, but it will cause the game and your team to lose. So why does this matter for us, though? Here's the thing. In our attempt often to do church in a healthy way, we overcomplicate things. Right? We do this often, and we have the best intentions, right? We want the church to thrive and to be healthy, but what happens is we sometimes overcomplicate church. We can obsess over production quality because we think it'll make us look better, right? Neglecting the reason that we come together and open up Scripture and encourage each other. What this looks like is turning discipleship into a program and neglecting the important relationship component. And again, there's nothing wrong with programs in the context of churches, but often, right, we add more stuff to our churches because we're trying to mimic the church down the road because we believe we can achieve a similar level of success if we're just doing what they do. Right? So we add more and more on, and it complicates things, and ultimately it doesn't usually work well. This looks like prioritizing attendance and giving over life change. And attendance and giving are indicators of things. Doesn't necessarily mean it's even an indicator of health. But it seems to us sometimes that every church that gets attention and is thriving is big, have a lot of numbers and huge budgets, and so we think we should have that as well. Again, we can overcomplicate things, making everything into a program. Right? If we could just do that next thing, right, it'll make us rapidly grow. And I want to be honest with you for a moment. This is something I noticed pretty quickly in ministry. Most conferences, church conferences, a lot of books written on ministry, programs that are made available, articles, ministry resources, they're not catered to churches like ours. So why do we attempt to be like them? Right? 90% of the churches in the country are like ours, like smaller, rural. And so why do we look to some of those resources and try to be just like them? We're different, and that's a good thing. So we need to be careful, though, how we define church health and how we seek it. Right? We need to be intentional about getting back to those fundamentals, right? Staying on frame. Because most of what happens in a healthy church, it's not public, it's not glamorous. In fact, it's kind of mundane. It's kind of boring, right? No one's going to seek you out to speak in conferences, to write books. You're not going to want to find out your secret sauce because it's kind of boring, but in reality, that's the way God intends it to be. So what I want to talk about this morning as we wrap up our series, this is week 13, if you've been keeping track, in the book of 1 Corinthians. We're wrapping this series up that I entitled From Drift to Direction, looking at chapter 16. So if you want to go ahead and turn there, it'll be helpful for you to reference that as well, though I'll have the text up on the screen. And again, if this is your first week or you haven't remembered, this was a letter written by Paul to the Corinthian church. He helped establish it. He spent 1.5 years of his life there teaching them and training them, and now he's left and he's heard news that things aren't going well. And so throughout this letter, he has been addressing some of the issues that have come up, and he's trying to, again, reorient them in a direction of faithfulness. And so now he's concluding his letter, and he's going to give them closing remarks that can kind of be seen as a summary of things for them to hold on to, right? Important takeaways. And I want you to kind of process for a moment how last words are significant. See, in our culture, right, last words are significant. The last words someone says on their deathbed are important to us. The last words your loved one says before they leave for a season are important. And so as we look at chapter 16 here, it's important for us to see this as Paul's last words, at least for a season, and to lean into them as he closes out this letter. So there's 4 points. We're going to run through them quick today. The first thing that we can do to ensure that High Prairie Community Church remains healthy is to give sacrificially. Right? We're going to talk about money in church, the thing that people feel awkward. We're mixing religion and money. Now we just need to talk about politics. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you where this comes from as Paul closes out this letter to the Corinthian church. Check out the first 4 verses here. He says this, "Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and to store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. And when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me." So here in the first few verses of our text, Paul is giving instructions concerning the giving of a need to Jerusalem, the church in Jerusalem. And so I said one thing that we can do to ensure that we remain healthy is to give sacrificially. You look at that text and you might kind of wonder where I'm getting that at. I want to kind of break it down for you a little bit here as we walk through this, just some big points to take note of. As he talks there in verse 1, he says, "Right now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so also you are to do." Right? He's letting them know that there is more to the church than just what exists in Corinth. right? He's letting them know that they are going to connect with other churches, right, around the region to be a part of what God is doing. And so for us to give sacrificially, it's important for us because it connects us to the bigger picture of what God is doing around the world. And what's neat is he gives instructions, though, on how they are to give. Look again at verse 2. He says, on the first day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and to store it up. Right? So he's saying that this giving that you are to do, this is for the Corinthian church. These principles are for us as well. It's to be both planned and intentional. This giving is not meant to be leftovers. Right? He doesn't say, hey, when you come together, whatever you got left over from the week, give that. No, he says intentionally set it aside so when you come together, you can give that money. It's kind of interesting as well. You look at verse 2. He continues. He tells them to set this aside. He says, as he may prosper. So this encouragement to give sacrificially, there's not a dollar amount attached to it. Right? If you make $100 a week, to give $10 each time we come together, that is a bit of a sacrifice. But if you make $1 million a week, $10 is nothing. And so what he's saying is, I'm calling you as a church to give sacrificially as it correlates to your income. And this is for you and God to wrestle with that percentage or what that looks like. But the principle there is to be intentional about it, and it's connected with your income itself, right? He gives you more, and so he expects you to be faithful with it. And one other thing else I want you to notice as well, we're going to kind of move through here kind of quick. But in verse 2, again, he says all this. He says, so that there'll be no collecting when I come. And I think this is kind of interesting, right? Paul, later in this letter here, you'll see, or later in the chapter, he intends to come back and visit the Corinthian people. He intends to take this money collected and bring it there to Jerusalem. And he says, I'm not going to collect it when I'm there. He expects it to already be set aside. And I was kind of thinking about that. I'm like, why would he do that? Well, he doesn't want to make a spectacle of this, right? This is something that goes on behind the scenes. It's kind of almost a passive thing of the church, right? Giving itself should be kind of boring. And so here's some important principles for the Corinthian church and for us as well, right? Simple things that a church does that helps them stay healthy and to thrive is to have a practice of giving sacrificially. Right, giving regularly to the local church, right? If you call this your home church, there is a responsibility for you to support High Prairie Community Church. There is a responsibility for us as a church, High Prairie Community Church, this organization, to intentionally give to other ministries as well, to make intentional sacrifices, to be generous. Right, we have a number of missionaries that we support in our budget, a number of mission partners, friends that visit and that we want to be a blessing to. And so this is a fundamental opportunity for us to do that. So we are called to give sacrificially. Now, early in my time as a pastor, I realized something for my own life, my own spiritual life, and that is that I needed help. It really hit me when being here probably within 6 to 9 months, I realized I was not quite right with my heart. And not that I thought that I could be an island, but I felt the weight of, again, needing some help. And it hit me, and I realized I don't have a pastor. That was the first time in my life I never had someone to say, this is a pastor for me. And so I kind of out of desperation started reaching out to some friends and some mentors and got connected with some other people who pastor me. Most of them are other pastors, and I gather with them consistently on a weekly basis and connect with them, and we check in and encourage each other as we walk through different challenging and exciting seasons of our lives. Right? There are other pastors that don't have a pastor either, and I've told them, let me be your pastor. Right? So encouragement is important for spiritual leaders. It's important for me, and it was important for the Corinthian church as well. Right, spiritual caretaker be ministered to as well. Because you guys understand this fundamentally in any organization, right? If the leader is not healthy, the church won't be. Right? If the leader of a company is not doing well, normally the company is not doing well. Right? The leader of the church can be healthy as well. So what Paul encourages the Corinthian church to do, as he closes out this letter, is to encourage fellow ministry partners. Look at verses 5 through 9. He says this, I will visit you after passing through Macedonia, for I intend to pass through Macedonia. And perhaps I will stay with you or even spend the winter, so that you may help me on my journey wherever I go. For I do not want to see you just now in passing, but I hope to spend some time with you if the Lord permits. But I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost. For a wide door of effective work has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. Right, so Paul writes here about his plans to hopefully visit them again. And if you look there in verses 6, right, he says, I want to come and be there with you so I can gain some help from you. Right, he needs help. He needs encouragement. Look at verses 9 there at the end. He says as he's doing this work in Ephesus, there's a great ministry need there, but he has a lot of resistance. Right, he wants to touch base with this church that he knows and he loves because, frankly, he needs some encouragement. Just as much as he wants to be an encouragement to them. And in verse 7, right, he says, I don't want to just stop by and have lunch with you and take off. I want to spend some real time with you guys. I want to connect with you intentionally. And so Paul wants to visit because he needs encouragement from them just as much as he's trying to be an encouragement to them. And it's not just Paul. There's Timothy and Apollos as well. He gives further details about some other partners coming through. When Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord, as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Now concerning our brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to visit you with the other brothers, but it was not at all his will to come now. He will come when he has the opportunity. So there he's talking about Timothy's planned visit, Apollos' hopeful visit with the church, and he gives them instructions to be a good host. Right? He tells them, right, when Timothy comes, put him at ease. Right? Don't let anyone despise him. Verse 11, right, help him on his way. Essentially, make him better off having been with you. Right? Show him respect. Send him off better because he visited with you. I don't know if you guys know this, but whenever we have friends with us, whenever we have missionaries with us, I want them to leave here better off because they visit us. Like, I mean, I have friends, right, and in ministry circles, they come together and they tell you, don't go to that church over there, right? It's not going to be encouraging. It's not going to be helpful. And here's the reality, right? We live in the middle of Nebraska, right? When I lived in Dallas, I randomly saw people because you come to Dallas for various reasons. I have not ever randomly seen anyone here in Polk, right? You don't end up here on accident. So people come here on purpose. And I want them to come here and thinking, right, I want to be here at High Prairie Community Church, right? We have some missionaries now who go out of their way to come and visit us because we have been a place of encouragement for them, not only spiritually, but financially, relationally, emotionally. And this is what Paul encourages the church to be for Timothy and for Apollos, right? Encourage these ministry partners. Make them better off because they visited with you. And again, these are just some fundamentals of being a church, and you begin getting these things in line, you'll find there's a lot of other things that start falling into place, right? When you're giving sacrificially, when you're intentional about encouraging ministry partners and leaders, right? There's other things going on in your heart to get you there that bring you to a place of health. So I want to encourage you. We have a number of missionaries and mission partners. I use those terms interchangeably. That I want us to know. We have details back there. We try to keep it updated. Know their names. Know their families. Know where they're serving. Reach out to them. Pray for them. Give to needs that they have. So 4 simple things. Give sacrificially. Encourage fellow ministry partners. And then remain grounded. All right, remain grounded. Next 2 verses 13 and 14. He says this, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. And here in these 2 verses, he gives them instructions with how they are to interact with the world, right? How they are to interact with their own heart, right? Be watchful, meaning be alert. Have some discernment. Keep a watchful eye out on your heart and on that of the church, right? Be careful what you invite into the church. He tells them to stand firm in your faith. So you're keeping a watchful eye on yourself, but also your theology. Right? As a church, right, we're protecting Orthodox theology. Act like men. It's not a sexist statement. It's a statement about guarding your interactions, meaning grow up, act mature, right? Don't be a spiritual adolescence, but grow up in the faith. Act like an adult. Know what's worth fighting over and what's worth letting go. Because there's many things in churches that we fight about that are not worth fighting about. He says, be strong. Know your defenses, right? Your strength is to, the strength is to obey God's law in the face of opposition. And then let all that you do be done in love. We kind of talked through this already, right? The reality is we do all these things for the benefit of, right? So check your heart. What motivates you? What should motivate you should be the person sitting in the pew next to you, the person who needs to hear the gospel, and above all, Christ. Our last point here. What 4 simple things can we do to ensure that High Prairie Community Church remains healthy? Finally, honor your leaders, and this might blur a few lines. I'll hopefully clarify these in a second. Paul, next few verses, 15 through 18, he's beginning again to wrap up his letter. He says, now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia, and that they devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such as these, and to every fellow worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaeus. I'm just going with those, man. Because they have made up for your absent. And this is interesting. He says, here are these individuals, kind of the first in the faith, these leaders. He says, for they refreshed my spirit as well as yours. And he calls them to give recognition to such people. The next few verses, I'll reference those. I'm not going to read those for the sake of time. He's just kind of sending kind of final greetings as he closes out his letter. But what he's doing here is he's calling the church to honor those who serve them. And those closing statements, it's full of honoring and encouragement. And so what you see here, right, is you have local leaders who take care of the church, all right? And so when I talk about encouraging fellow ministry partners and encouraging and honoring your leaders, right, I'm talking about a group that is local and a group that is not. Both serve the church, but in different capacities. One directly serves the church, while the other serves on behalf of the church. And so what this is for our church, obviously myself as the pastor, but I'm not the only one here. If I disappeared tomorrow, the church would be fine because we have a lot of great leaders. Many of them are on our diaconate board. So do you know the members on our diaconate board? Do you know their names and their families? Do you know the needs that they have? Are you praying for them? Right? Paul calls the church to give recognition to such people. So honor your leaders. These are kind of 4 simple ways that we can ensure that we remain healthy. Because just like in sports, just like in soccer, we can overcomplicate things, right? We want to get fancy, and sometimes there's a place for that. But often, our responsibility and call is to keep it simple, right? Stick to the fundamentals, right? Keep it on frame. When we tend to struggle with that, though, sometimes as a church. Again, there's a place for some of those things and programs and all that. But that's not, again, sometimes that's where our focus needs to be. Our focus needs to be on these fundamentals, right? Stop overthinking it. Right, let's get back to the basics, right? Giving sacrificially, encouraging our ministry partners, remaining grounded in what matters, and honoring those who serve us. So I have 2 questions for you to wrestle with as we finish up our time here. What percentage of your income do you give toward the ministry? And how do you encourage and support our ministry partners and leaders? Let's bow our heads in a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for us to come together this morning. Thank you for this reminder of our call as a church as we close up this letter. God, kind of some basic things that we sometimes overlook and kind of set to the side. But Lord, may we wrestle with these things, Lord. May we get this right as a church. May we be known for being generous and sending people off better because they've been connected with us. May we be known for our generosity financially. Lord, may we be known for our encouragement to those who come here and those who lead. God, we love you, and we want to get this right, and we need help. So help us this morning. In your amazing name, amen.